I'll never forget the night my phone rang and my mother's trembling voice told me, "Your grandpa's in the hospital, they broke his arm." For a moment, the world spun. My grandfather, 80 years old, frail but proud, was the kind of man who could tell stories for hours, who still mowed his own lawn just to prove age hadn't beaten him. To hear that someone had hurt him, broken him, felt like a nightmare. And when I learned that the culprits weren't thieves or random criminals but fake HOA officers pretending to have authority, my blood boiled. I didn't know it yet, but what followed would unleash a storm of loyalty, justice, and fury from a family that never backed down, especially not my biker cousins. It started in the middle of an ordinary afternoon. Grandpa had been sitting on his porch, sipping iced tea, when a pair of men in crisp polo shirts and fake name badges approached. They claimed they were from the HOA, saying there had been complaints about his yard, that he needed to remove his garden decorations and replace his fence. Grandpa, stubborn and old school, told them to leave. But instead of walking away, they turned aggressive. One grabbed his arm, the other shoved him against the porch railing. My grandfather fought back the best he could, but he was 80. The sound of bones snapping was enough to make a neighbor scream. The men ran off before the police arrived, leaving my grandfather in pain and humiliated on the ground. When I got to the hospital, seeing him lying there with a cast up to his shoulder broke something inside me. He tried to smile, but I could see the shame in his eyes. "They thought I was weak," he whispered, his voice gravelly. That was the moment I knew, this wasn't just about a broken arm. This was about dignity, respect, and justice. I called my cousins that same night. They were bikers through and through, tattoos, leather jackets, roaring Harleys that could shake the earth when they rolled together. Family to them wasn't a word. It was a code. And when they heard what had happened to Grandpa, the silence on the line was louder than any engine. Then came the words I'll never forget, "We ride at dawn." The next week was chaos. The police investigated but admitted it would take time. The fake HOA badges were convincing, but the men had vanished like ghosts. Neighbors whispered about strangers in SUVs and clipboard guys who had been seen before. But while the law moved slow, my cousins moved fast. They canvassed the neighborhood, asking questions no one else dared to ask. They showed photos of Grandpa in the hospital, daring anyone to hide the truth. Slowly, leads began to trickle in. Someone had seen a black truck parked near Grandpa's street. Another mentioned a man bragging at a bar about teaching old folks lessons. Each clue lit the fire hotter. Then came the confrontation. We found them outside a rundown property 2 towns over. The same polos. The same smug attitudes. My cousins rolled in first, a dozen bikes thundering down the street, chrome shining under the sun. I followed in my car, heart pounding, torn between fear and pride. The fake officers froze, realizing too late they were outnumbered. My oldest cousin, Bear, a mountain of a man with a beard that could scare the devil, stepped off his bike and growled, "You broke our grandpa's arm." The men stammered, tried to talk their way out, but it was useless. My cousins didn't lay a finger on them, not yet. Instead, they boxed them in, revving engines so loud the ground shook. It wasn't violence. It was power. They wanted those men to feel the same fear my grandfather had felt. And when the police, tipped off anonymously, arrived minutes later, the cowards were already trembling in handcuffs. In court, the truth finally spilled out. They weren't HOA officers at all, just con men running a scam, intimidating elderly homeowners into paying fake fines or giving up access to their yards. My grandfather had stood his ground, and they punished him for it. But thanks to the evidence my cousins gathered and the pressure they applied, justice was swift. The men were sentenced to years behind bars. Grandpa attended the trial in a sling, head held high. When the verdict came down, he leaned over to me and whispered, "They thought I was weak. But look what family strength can do." The story could have ended there, but it didn't. In the months that followed, our neighborhood changed. People stopped cowering at the mention of the HOA. Real officers came to community meetings to teach residents how to spot scams. My cousins, once seen as intimidating outsiders, became local heroes. And Grandpa. He wore that cast like a badge of honor. He'd sit on his porch, wave at every biker who passed, and tell anyone who would listen about the time his family rode for him. What I learned through all of it is this: strength doesn't always look like fists or fury. Sometimes it's the roar of engines in the night, the silent vow of loyalty, or the courage of an old man who refuses to bow to bullies. My grandfather's arm eventually healed, but his spirit, that was never broken. And every time I hear the rumble of a Harley, I'm reminded that family isn't just blood. It's the unbreakable promise that no one stands alone.